happiest of holidays and welcome to the Intrazone Roadmap Pitstop December 2020 edition. This is a bonus monthly show that answers that burning question in your mind. What's rolling out now for SharePoint and related technology in Microsoft 365? I'm Old Saint Mark Cashman, Senior Product Manager on the Microsoft 365 marketing team, here to help the ongoing record straight. This month, I talked with Tejas Mehta, our Principal Program Manager on the SharePoint team, who is our primary lead for much of the integration work that we do between SharePoint as a content services platform surfaced within Microsoft Teams, recently focused on updating the experience and options when you add teams to your SharePoint team site. December rounded out 2020 nicely, and aren't we all glad to have 2020 in the rearview mirror? The close of the year brought a load of new innovation across the spectrum of employee engagement and teamwork across the intranet. As always, we'll focus on what landed this month, plus a few related items and always some fun teasers looking into next month. Because we're at the end of the year, though, as a bonus to this last month of 2020, we'll run down some of the top 10 features that we highlighted across all of the roadmap pit stops. We'll also focus on the top 5 episodes of the Intrazone, and we will hear closing remarks from our Corporate Vice President of Engineering, Jeff Teeper. Remember, this podcast is your 40-ish minutes to stay informed and ahead of the ever-curving Microsoft 365 roadmap. Before we dive into everything, I wanted to highlight one big use and adoption milestone and a recent Gartner notion. We now have recorded over 200 million users on a monthly basis in SharePoint, and Microsoft has again been recognized as a leader in the 2020 Gartner Content Services Platform. Their Magic Quadrant report came out, and we are up and to the right in a great placement, knowing that we offer you a lot of great enterprise content management capabilities. But 200 million users of SharePoint in Microsoft 365, we couldn't be more pleased, and we really see that as a sign that you're enjoying the service and getting a ton of value every day, every month throughout the year. Okay, we've got a lot of tech presents to unwrap to discover all that 2020 brought down our collective collaborative chimneys. So, let's do this. First up, we start with employee engagement. The first feature that I want to highlight is that SharePoint site headers are getting some nice updates. We're making it easier to customize the header of your site. The new default site header for SharePoint sites will be the compact header instead of the standard header. Site owners will see updated options in the Change the Look panel, including a minimal header, which has a reduced height to provide quick visual access to content, an extended header, which includes an optional background image, an expanded site logo widths, and options for logo alignment, whether you want to put it in the left, middle, or right. And now it's easy to toggle the site title label to be on or off if you don't need it. Now you can truly control your site's first impression, starting at the very top with the site header just the way you want it. Next up is the ability to send SharePoint pages or news articles to Yammer, essentially page to post in a few clicks. You can create Yammer posts, questions, polls, and praises directly from a SharePoint page or news article. The Send To dialog provides a rich preview for media and the ability to add text to the post. It's also possible to upload images and files to the post that are linked to the share. So, start spreading the news and pages and keep it going out to your communities of interest, from SharePoint out to Yammer. Next up is the new SharePoint Success site. This is a new template that was added to the SharePoint Lookbook. This is a ready-to-deploy, customizable SharePoint communication site that helps your colleagues create high-impact sites to meet the goals of your organization. This new template comes pre-populated with site creation inspiration and training on how to create high-quality and purposeful SharePoint sites. You'll find Microsoft-maintained SharePoint training content, success stories, and site site creation guidelines. It also includes a page dedicated to site creation and usage policies that can be customized to fit the needs of your organization. Comes loaded with a lot of great stuff, and of course you make it your own to establish it as a learning site to help everyone make SharePoint a success throughout your organization. And last, in employee engagement, now when you use the Migration Manager in SharePoint Admin Center, you can target as destinations directly to Teams and OneDrive. Admins select OneDrive usernames or URLs and or select various teams and those channels that they want to target as migration destinations, moving files exactly where you want them. A few notes on the authentication side: you have to make sure that you have access to the destination as a global admin or as a SharePoint administrator in Microsoft 365 tenant where you're migrating to, and you have to have access to the source, also known as the Windows credentials, that have read access to any of the network file shares that you plan to migrate from. This evolution of the Migration Manager makes it easier to move content into Microsoft 365 with permissions intact, along with more of your predefined information architecture on day one. Let's take a pause and hear a little bit more about the work that we're doing to bring SharePoint and Teams closer together and make that an easier step to make it possible. We'll talk now with Tejas Mehta, Principal Program Manager on the SharePoint engineering team. All right, so Tejas, nice to see you. Actually, physically see you.
Physically seeing you. I think we're about 6 feet apart.
Yep. No, we've got social distance. It's the wingspan of an eagle. I think a picnic table is generally about 6 feet long. So first off, it's truly nice to see you in person, but some details on the Meta world. How is everything?
Yeah, things are great. Thanks for choosing an outdoor location close to home. I think we're pretty fortunate to be living in an area that's quite beautiful from a nature perspective. So just enjoying the holiday break, taking some time to unplug a little bit, spending time with family, not going anywhere, obviously, because of the COVID situation. Thankful that I'm able to spend that time with my family.
Good. So you've had your laptop closed.
We were supposed to do this yesterday, but I stood you up because I did not check my calendar. I did not get the notification that Mark is sitting in the parking lot waiting for me to show up.
That's great. I don't mind being stood up. That was a good reason. But since you are here, I think it's time to talk about SharePoint and Teams. We'll start with the not Teams question. So if somebody were to ask you, what was life like for SharePoint before Microsoft Teams, you being on the SharePoint engineering team, what was life like, when you think about building SharePoint, trying to do everything that we're now doing for collaboration, but not having that Teams component? What was that like?
It's been interesting. I've been in the SharePoint universe for some time. So I think there's the, what was SharePoint like years and years and years ago versus what was it like sort of in the immediate time frame before Teams showed up. And I think that's where I spent, that's when I joined the PM team. And I'd say that I was focused a lot on team collaboration scenarios. So at the time, Office 365 groups, now sort of rebranded as Microsoft 365 groups, was kind of the collaboration platform that SharePoint wanted to integrate in. So the whole idea of bringing together all of these sort of previously siloed experiences together from a collaboration perspective. So if I would say before Teams existed, you had this notion of communications, but that was largely Outlook and email.
Yeah.
The content service being provided by SharePoint for files, lists, pages, and other content and other workloads across M365. It was a world where still it didn't feel like you had that tight collaborative experience, and we had a number of different workloads that laddered up to collaboration experience in Microsoft 365. But I think we had started a journey. We didn't know where it was going until the sort of Teams came along and blew things up and really presented that opportunity to make things even better from a collaboration.
I think it's that big value of improving teamwork, and seeing a lot of the work that you're doing that we'll talk about is bringing down that level of how do you work effectively on content together when most of what the content is the conversation that led to the content that you're creating. So I think bringing the two together is obviously deeply important, and it was a no-brainer when they started Teams that SharePoint was already at the core of it.
Yeah, I think the collaboration experience, the universe was very much still very independent. You would use email to talk about something with a group of collaborators, but then you'd go into SharePoint to work on your files and then other workloads for like Planner and things like that. But it didn't really feel like all of that was brought together in a very unique way, in a way that users would actually enjoy and take advantage of in a single place, sort of wrapping all of that together from a compliance boundary standpoint as well as a collab standpoint. So I think that's
so if we cut to then the now, we know that SharePoint is integrated with Teams. I want to talk to you specifically about what shipped this month or got updated this month, which is the whole add Teams to SharePoint. When you look at what is the integration between SharePoint and Teams, from a technical perspective, what are we actually doing on the back end?
Teams was released. Every team that's created is actually backed by a Microsoft 365 group. So that was sort of like the common thread that kind of brings together all of these Microsoft 365 experiences. Teams provides the communication mechanism from a collaboration standpoint. And then SharePoint is really delivering all of the content services. So any the files that you collaborate on, lists or pages, it's really around content. It's difficult to really think about working together with other people if it's limited to just the communication modality, whether it's chat or email, without having the context around the content and business process that users need and care about in getting their work done. So I think that's really the crux of the underlying integration, is making sure that the content that's delivered as part of the teamwork and the collaboration experiences are really powered and surfaced by SharePoint.
When you say content, just a quick list of actual types of content, documents front and center, that's the files tab, and a lot of how people share and chat. There's the new lists app. So obviously SharePoint lists, now Microsoft lists, definitely integrated in core experience. There's stuff that we have announced that will be coming, in 2021, which is the portals experience, and really how do SharePoint sites show up in Teams that doesn't just feel like you kind of put in a web browser, but having that be a great experience. So the feature that I think is then the glue that binds, which you're now, kind of version 2 of, we talk about it as Teamify. And I think Jeff Teeper has actually blessed that by saying that out loud. It's much easier than saying add a team to a SharePoint team site. Talk us through what the feature started as, why we did it in the first place, and now, big improvements with V2 Teamify.
Yeah, I'll take a step back, because even before we got to Teamify, there was another colloquial term that we use for another feature called Groupify. So if you think about our set of SharePoint customers that exist today, with classic SharePoint team sites that want to take advantage of all of the new capabilities that we bring to bear with group connected sites, we introduced a feature a few years back called Groupify, which takes those classic sites and brings them into the sort of the modernized group connected world. The fact that every team is connected to a Microsoft 365 group, you actually need that to be the case in order to add Teams capability to existing sites. So there was an entire set of customers that we wanted to make sure we brought along the modernization journey, taking all of their existing assets without having to recreate new teams and then migrating a bunch of content. We wanted to make it super easy for customers to bring their existing sites to groups and to teams. So if you think about it as a staged journey, we added the Teamify feature really to address the set of all of those sites that exist in the world that happen to be group connected, that don't yet take advantage of that chat capability, that collaborative experience that Teams provides. So we had a lot of feedback from customers saying, hey, it's the same situation as Groupify from a couple of years ago. I want to take advantage of Teams, but I don't want to have to create another one and then go through this sort of migration experience. Let me leverage the content that I've already invested in, that my users have invested in. Let me take advantage of all of that in place. And that was really the impetus behind the building of this feature.
In the first instance, truly was you had to start in Teams, because you would say, I want to create a new team, but I already kind of have one. And so I just want to connect it to an existing, at the time, Office 365 group. And then when you did that, you would carry forward what was not with Teams. Now it has Teams. But the reverse of that is you had a lot of people that maybe were more SharePoint oriented because they had been using that team site for a long time. And now this Teamify feature shows up in the bottom left and is just a click away to add teams. But let's get into what V2 brings. Now when somebody clicks the button that's been available for a while, what's the new experience and what kind of choices can they make on their route to combine SharePoint and Teams?
Yeah, so the V1 version of this feature was literally, we had that little promotional banner that showed up in the left navigation, inviting a group owner to say, hey, would you like to add a team to this existing group? You click on that, and then with the snap of a finger, we created a team on the back end, and then we threw the user into the team with no context for the existing
and almost no content.
Well, at least
files.
visibly, at least visibly no content. You would land in the general channel of the new team that was created. Great, it's connected to the same group, but you click on the Files tab, it was empty. None of the other SharePoint content was there. So you're in an empty conversation stream in chat without any of the content and the context for that content as well. So what we did in V2 was we reacted to some of that feedback, especially where if you take files as being sort of the number one workload in SharePoint that users leveraged in team sites, that's what users wanted to see when they landed in their new team. We introduced a wizard in the SharePoint experience. So when you click on the Add a Teams link in the experience, we present you with a multi-page wizard that invites the user to select resources from the current site they would like to bring as tabs into the new team that gets created. And we've made it really easy for the user to look at the list of recommended items from the site. And these could be all the resources that you talked about earlier: documents, pages, and lists. And you can, so the experience allows you to pick and choose the things that you want. When you're happy with that list, you click on Done. Then we create the new team, and then we automatically pin those items that the user has selected as tabs in the channel for the new team that's been created. So it actually provides users with a great way to build that context, not just for themselves as the initiator of the action, but then the rest of the team that enters the team's experience, they'll be able to see all of the things that at least
And I really like the way I understand it was you have the communication aspect, that's Teams. You have the content services of SharePoint. But to have somebody, especially who's moving from maybe a SharePoint world into what is it like in Teams, to have that context is super critical. And if the outcome is that is kind of our most concise way to define collaboration, communication content in context. That's what I heard.
Yeah, and we've done some experiments and looked at the data, and what we've seen is just by virtue, even before we did the work for V2, just by virtue of adding a team to an existing site makes it healthier. More users are clicking on content, more users are collaborating on content, more users are sharing that content. It makes the site, the underlying site, more sticky. Even if the user isn't necessarily on the site in the web itself, they might be interacting with the files in Teams. And that's exactly what this feature was all about. We don't necessarily care whether you're using SharePoint in the web, but as long as you're getting benefit and value from the underlying content that is surfaced through Microsoft Teams, we see that the underlying group is actually healthier as a result.
So if by the number that Jeff Teeper and Microsoft shared of 200 million active cloud users from a SharePoint perspective, that's a big accomplishment. We know a lot of the way you just described it is how people are now leveraging SharePoint as a way of the SharePoint as a storage content platform experience through Teams. However it might be that they're getting value, I think you are always focused on, well, what do you need? What do you want? And delivering on that. And if that's the premise for where we're at now with Teams and SharePoint, Teamify being just a good example of what you've done recently, how might you then qualify what is the team working on next to further the integration?
There are a few things, and I think you've seen the work that we've been doing to make sure that our files experience is top-notch inside of Teams, making the SharePoint document library feel much more like a native part of Teams so that you don't have to bounce out of the Teams.
The breadcrumb.
That's right. And the breadcrumb. See, thanks for reminding me. As part of the Teamify feature, now when you land inside the general channel, in any channel, you will see a breadcrumb that allows you to navigate up the document library tree to the root. Which is something that our customers have been asking for, but really does allow a user to see all of the content inside the underlying site. From a team collaboration standpoint, I think that we're doing a lot of things to make the Teamify experience better, making it even easier for users to find the things that they care about and pinning them. We've done a lot of work on the SharePoint side. There's work ahead that we're thinking about on the Teams side to make sure that users can discover their SharePoint content a little bit more easy and making it easier to chat around it inside of chat, making it easier to pin these things as tabs inside of channels. And then we're also looking at ways to making the underlying site, like what does it mean to live in a universe where a larger proportion of team sites that are being created are actually being created as a result of the creation of new teams? Should those sites look or behave differently, especially when users are spending more of their time inside of teams? What does it mean to have like a homepage for a team powered by pages that looks native and it feels native inside of teams? These are some of the things that we're focused on from a team collaboration perspective. But even more broadly, I think to what you were hinting at in terms of what we've started to talk about is we focused a lot on team collaboration scenarios, but we're also looking at sort of broader employee engagement, broad scale portals experiences inside of teams as well. So how do you take that richness of like the broad corporate communications landing sites that you have in an organization? How do you bring that into the context of teams and help users discover content that's important and newsworthy for users to consume, and share that content into chats and channels, collaborate and engage with on the content itself? That's a whole new tranche of investment that we're making that we talked about recently at Ignite, and we're really excited about them.
I was just going to say, just a note to our audience that I will absolutely link to the new Teamify documentation. Super easy to walk through and connect SharePoint more and more to Teams. But also that you and Pratik, your peer in India, did a really great session that was all about the investments that we're making across the board, but really spent a lot of time showcasing what this new, effectively a SharePoint home site in Teams, I think at the time we called it the company app. That experience coming in the early part of next year. Really nice to see it, understand the why, and how it balances that SharePoint really is this back-end service for both teamwork and for broader communication. But to see it in reality and actually have it make sense, like, oh yeah, we would do that. In fact, you and I are doing that with what we call Microsoft Web. It's a really great experience to see it in Teams, and I switched my context from broader news consumption or broader things that are happening around the company to then working directly one-on-one with somebody.
And that's, again, based on feedback that we heard from customers, and that, hey, help us help our users stay in one place if they choose to do so. And don't just give us a way to shim in like a page that happens to be a homepage. Give me all of the benefits of global navigation. Let me program the important corporate links so that my users can actually navigate to them in the context of Teams. Provide a way for wayfinding for my users so that they can get to the sites that they care about. So it's not just about sort of bringing in that one sort of iframed homepage of a communication site. The integration is much more deep, allows for that wayfinding and that global navigation, surfacing of important news, and also integration with search. So if you've done the work to take advantage of Microsoft 365 search, that will be included as part of the integration.
Good. So it sounds like we'll have some things to talk about in the future. Really great to get time with you today, to both see you in person and that your willingness to share a little bit about what you and your team are working on, because I'm on the same side, go SharePoint, go Teams. But truly, I think you hear that from feedback. And so it's a lot of great work that you're doing, but thank you for being here on the Intrazone.
Thanks for having me, Mark. And I just want to make sure that it's clear that this is a global effort. We're sitting together here in Sammamish, Washington, because we live in close proximity. But if I had my way, I'd have Pratik and my counterparts, around the globe participating in this discussion.
Well, we'll make that happen in the future. But from Sammamish, Washington, to all where the team is, happy holidays. A lot of great work that the team's been doing. Happy 2021 soon.
Happy 2021, Mark. I can't wait for us to actually get back to campus live.
It's always great to hear from Tejas, and as a colleague of his for many years, it was really nice to see him at a social distance, to have it be a conversation that wasn't just over Teams, since we don't live too far away. But just to summarize a lot of what you heard, that new feature is the ability to add Microsoft Teams to your SharePoint site. We, as you heard Tejas mention, are of course very excited to announce that it's now easier to bring in the Teams experience that is connected to your SharePoint team site. And you'll hear it here and in other places referenced as Teamify. As you connect SharePoint to Teams, you choose what lists, libraries, and pages you want to bring into Teams as tabs in the new default general channel. If you haven't taken advantage of this one in its V1 state, this V2 state brings it even more to the forefront of being able to not just connect the two services, but to bring the content in one click, in one motion. This helps bring content and collaboration to more of the sites you use for teamwork excellence. The last thing within Teamwork is really a resource that we've put together with a lot of great resources within this new resource center. We have now a Microsoft Lists entry in the adoption.microsoft.com site. You'll see a lot of adoption materials for a lot of different applications, and we now have established a new Microsoft Lists Adoption Center. Here you will find an adoption playbook, day in the life guides, a quick start guide, a scenario deck, a lookbook specifically to showcase all of the things that you can do with lists and the types of lists that you can put together. You'll also get internal communication templates to help roll out user and adoption within your company. There's pointers to documentation, training, plus materials to help build an internal lists champion program throughout your organization. My colleague Andrea Lum did some really great work aggregating some existing materials, but really putting together a lot of the new offerings at the new Microsoft Lists Adoption Center. I'll definitely put a link in the show notes for this one, and you'll see how it can really help you roll out Microsoft Lists in the most efficient, effective way within your organization. So now it's time to look back on 2020 from a features perspective. This is the top 10 features of 2020. A drum roll, please. Number 10, Office 365 video migration to Microsoft Stream. This was a big move, and 2020 marked the time when everyone could make that move. Number 9, create a list from Microsoft Excel. This was one of those big dig projects that brings together the collaborative database of lists while retaining the ability to continually analyze your data at any time back into Excel, but it first helps you import the data from Excel. Number 8, 100 gigabyte file uploads. The growth in this space is always top of mind to match and meet what you are doing in service, the kinds of files that you're bringing in, and that's across the web experience and sync. So don't hold back, bring your big files to the cloud. Number 7, Yammer Conversations Web Part, bringing a two-way dialogue within the context of the content and the message of your sites. Number 6, multilingual publishing. That is language accessibility with more options for multi-geo-distributed organizations or whomever has any language beyond just a single language requirement. Number 5, Mover Migration Worldwide Availability. This is now a worldwide free cloud-to-cloud movement of files from third-party cloud storage providers into Microsoft 365. Number 4, SharePoint home sites. That's one site at the core of your intranet. Comes with a lot of nice bells and whistles to make it a super personalized experience for everybody with the ability to curate the content that's meant for everyone. This is a way to establish everyone's own central portal for the ages. For the top 3 features of 2020, I want to turn to my colleagues in engineering to describe what they've built. Number 3, add to OneDrive. Here is Olga Daleka, Senior Program Manager from the OneDrive team, to tell us a little bit more.
Add to OneDrive is something that we built because today, when someone shares a file with you, you have to remember who shared it with you and how they shared it. And if you've ever tried to get a big group of people to align on any one decision, you know that it's a big uphill battle to get everyone to share content in your preferred way so that you can find it again the most easily. Instead, what we built Add to OneDrive for was so that you can find shared folders in your OneDrive and you can organize them in a place that makes sense to you. So that instead of like me asking Jason, hey, when you shared that file with me, did you use the sharing dialog, or did you paste a URL in Teams, or did you send me a link in email? I can just find the folder once, add it to my OneDrive, organize it how I want in my OneDrive, and then it makes it really easy for me to get back to the folder that Jason shared with me in a way that makes sense to me. So that then I can just spend more time working, less time, contemplating how Jason decided to send me a file because it's Tuesday.
Number 2, Microsoft Lists. Here is Lincoln Damaris, Principal Program Manager, to tell us a little bit more.
At the Build conference this year, we launched a new M365 app called Microsoft Lists. This app is designed to help you track information and organize work. If you're one of the millions of people already using SharePoint lists to track and organize work, the Lists app makes it easier than ever before to get back to the lists that you rely on. If you're new to the world of lists, I hope this convinces you to go out and give them a try. Think of lists as lightweight databases that anybody can create and customize. At the heart of every list is a flexible table of data where you can define the schema of the items you want to track. Using this power, anybody can start a list to track anything and everything that matters, including issues, assets, routines, contacts, inventory, incidents, and much more. If you're not into defining your own schema, that's okay. We've got you covered with our out-of-the-box templates. The power of lists as lightweight databases becomes evident when you start layering custom formatting, views, and automations on top of your data to help your team stay productive and focused on what needs to get done. And the best part is, because lists are a part of Microsoft 365, you can rely on enterprise-ready security and compliance for everything you see here.
And the number 1 feature introduced in 2020, SharePoint Syntax. Here's Sean Squires, Principal Program Manager, highlighting the 3 core syntax components.
When we think about this, we think of it as really evolving the service. Intelligent content services. And we kind of look at this as sort of 3 overlapping pillars, if you will. There's content understanding. It's the creation of these no-code AI models that can really help the system to understand how to classify or understand what type of document it is that's being uploaded, and then to extract the right information from it, and then really just automatically apply that metadata. We all know how difficult it is to get people to consistently and manually apply metadata. And so the more that we can do to help you in that endeavor, we think that that's a valuable investment. And then obviously the processing. Really a lot of this is as the stuff comes into the system, as your content comes into the system, how can we really integrate with the rest of the Power Platform to help you streamline those content-centric processes? And then of course, as you saw with the retention label, and soon we'll have sensitivity label support as well, to really help you control and manage the content to improve security and the proper implementation of governance policies using Microsoft Information Protection.
That was a lot of highlights of the top features of what was released in 2020. There were a few other things released in 2020 that are closer to what you're listening to right now, the Intrazone. And thanks to all your ears listening to the Intrazone, these are the top 5 episodes of the Intrazone in 2020. Number 5, a home for all your lists. This was a great show with Harini Salidi and Lindsay Gill, and we dug into all the design elements of Microsoft Lists, including the new Microsoft 365 Lists app, which is that home for all your lists. Number 4, make a list and check it twice. Yes, lists again, this time with Michaela Barrett and Lincoln Damaris, and this one was tied to our initial disclosure of Microsoft Lists at Build 2020. Number 3, an API for teamwork. This show was with Bill Bliss and Victor Weiland. This is a great discussion about Teams as a platform across bots, tabs, and all those things that you can build for those great custom experiences in Microsoft Teams. Number 2, designing your intranet. This was a fun conversation with Sue Hanley, Melissa Torres, and Matt Wolodarski, where we explored what and how of establishing your intranet in the cloud for everyone in your organization. And here we are with number 1, the number 1 episode of the Intrazone in 2020, Tasks in Teams. This was a fun conversation with Shin Yi Lim and Howard Crow, where we discussed how To Do and Planner were evolving as a new left rail app in Teams to show you your individual tasks and shared plans all within one location, all within Microsoft Teams, your hub for teamwork. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, subscribed, and shared the Intrazone. We hope you enjoyed it in 2020, and we are looking so forward to many, many shows in 2021. Let us now move into related technology. We're going to start with OneDrive and take it from a summary of OneDrive throughout 2020. We're going to hear a clip from my colleague, Randy Wong, who is a principal PM manager, and he was discussing from a OneDrive perspective, 2020 recap and the 2021 anticipation. You'll also hear him explain what I mentioned earlier, but in the context of the 200 million user mark and the impact on OneDrive and how the engineering team worked really hard to keep pace with both scale and innovation. So with that, we turn to Randy to hear the OneDrive 2020 summary.
2020 was just an incredible year by all accounts. Despite a pandemic, it was our biggest growth year in terms of OneDrive monthly active usage. OneDrive and SharePoint eclipsed 200 million monthly active users and grew over 100% year over year. So there's not that many products, both consumer or enterprise, that have reached that scale. And probably what I'm most proud of is that our engagement was up even more as a percentage. And, we saw incredible growth for things like Microsoft Teams. Our Teams growth was up 10x, really incredible. And, the numbers are great, but what I'm most proud of is how we are there for our customers through this difficult time. In my job, I talk to a lot of customers, and OneDrive just played such an important role at just keeping the world going and keeping people productive. We work with governments, schools, pharmaceutical companies, and it's just amazing to see how OneDrive really was so important to those companies and helping them pull through. When you think about cloud services, one of the benefits is kind of elastic storage, and we're built on Azure, so we can anticipate demand, but no one could have foreseen the spikes that we saw in March when COVID hit. It was all hands on deck, making sure that the product was up, reliable, that we were servicing our customers. We saw schools, governments, big companies just rally to the cloud because that was the way that they could keep their businesses going. And what we saw is really a adoption pull through, not just a demand pull through, but they're really accelerating their usage and their time to value. And when we think about OneDrive and our vision for OneDrive really being the service for Microsoft 365 and really powering those file experiences and collaboration experiences across Microsoft 365, we saw that shine through more now than ever. And we talk about the integrations with Office, with Teams, with Outlook, with Yammer, with Stream, and all these different places where OneDrive shows up. Really, that is a big story of 2020 is how people are using OneDrive, not just within OneDrive, but across the whole Microsoft 365 ecosystem. And features like Add to OneDrive and things like Move and Keep Sharing or expiring external access or KFM improvements, all of those things accrue not just to OneDrive, but to all these other parts of Microsoft 365. And then one of the features that I'm most proud of is our performance improvements. And we realize when people are trying to access content from their home machine, when there's 3 kids on Wi-Fi on video calls all day, we really need to make sure that people can get to their content. And we improved overall speed to getting to the web page by 30% this year, which was a big bump.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Next up in related technology is the Microsoft Graph Toolkit 2.0. This is a collection of components and providers to ease your app integration with Microsoft Graph, as easy as writing 2 lines of code. In 2.0, you'll find reusable, framework-agnostic components and authentication providers for accessing and working with Microsoft Graph, which of course leads you to all of the great content in Microsoft 365 from a programmatic perspective. The Microsoft Graph Toolkit is great for developers of all experience levels looking to develop a web application, a Microsoft Teams tab, or SharePoint web parts that connect to and access data from Microsoft Graph. So you might be asking yourself, what's new in 2.0? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's now broken into several packages, so you only get the code that you need, as you may not need everything that comes within the toolkit. There's also a new React package, making it simpler to use the toolkit when developing React applications by wrapping all components and exporting them as React components. There are also new distinct components like the Person Card 2.0, which enables you to provide more information about the person, provide their org chart, views on relevant shared files and conversations. There's also a new To-Do component. This splits into the To-Do and the Tasks management perspective, which is used to get to the To-Do and Planner APIs respectively. And all of these components, and plus the original ones from 1.0, now have better caching, better theming, localization, accessibility, and of course, a lot of general bug fixes all around. 1.0 was very yesterday. 2.0 is here and awaits your graph-powered apps today. And last in related technology is something that will, get your background in Microsoft Teams. Some of my program manager colleagues created some SharePoint and Microsoft Lists sweater backgrounds for your use as backgrounds in Microsoft Teams. I'll have links and everything so you can go get them, plus more. There's a ton of backgrounds that have been put out there. These are all meant to get cozy and warm for your holiday chats and conference calls, be it for SharePoint in your background or Microsoft Lists in your background. They've got a really great sweater appeal to them. A big thanks to my colleagues Wendy Hadayat and Ben Trula for creating the ones for SharePoint and Microsoft Lists, and to our community members Jason Custer and Michael Gillett, who provided a lot more designs of other apps, the inspiration of the sweater design, and the site where you can get everything. I'll have a lot of links so you can go gather up as many as you want to use and then start having great sweater backgrounds inspired by Microsoft 365 apps. Okay, close your eyes and visualize what's on your wish list 1 month from now. As we carry over, here are 2 teasers for what's coming in January 2021. Teaser number 1, JSON list form customization for the header, footer, and body text. Just go into Edit Form, Configure Layout, copy paste the JSON you want in there. Beautiful forms. Teaser number 2, a new Integrate menu items within Microsoft Lists. This is where you will go to see and use all the rules or any of the created workflows that you've designed within Microsoft Lists. That's it with this month's Crystal Ball. We'll share more details and other features and updates within the full SharePoint Roadmap Pitstop January 2021 edition next month. Before we close out 2020, let's hear from Jeff Teeper, CVP of OneDrive, SharePoint, and Teams Engineering. This is an audio snippet taken from his recent Microsoft 365 Collaboration Conference keynote.
We are so excited about how your organization will use Microsoft 365 to support and strengthen your workplace communication so that you can better share information, connect with your employees, and build a tighter workplace community that's critical for the success of every organization.
Jeff, I couldn't have said it better myself. We've added a list of important resource links in the show notes and in the corresponding blog post on the Microsoft Tech community within the SharePoint community blog, giving you all that you need to get up to speed and stay ahead. I hope you've enjoyed this roadmap pit stop. Time to relax, knowing you're all caught up on 2020. And what a year, if any of 2020 from a SharePoint technology perspective still leaves you with open questions or concerns, please send us your thoughts and comments. We're here to put both our and your best change management foot forward as we hoof it into 2021. So, ho, ho, ho! Happiest of holidays to the Intrazone and beyond. Until next year, may your content collaboration and employee engagement be merry and bright.